4 words. How to help. Almost 3 years ago, a friend group I was part of was blowing up with text messages about being nervous to go to school. Just a few minutes before school started, we got multiple text messages about 2 students shot and wounded at a school not that far away from us. Some of my friends chose to not go to school that day. The next day, we got another report, this time about 9 firearms being confiscated at a school that was even closer to us than the last one. And this time, even more of my friends chose to not go to school that day. The things we hear on the news, read on social media, or the stories that we hear from some of our friends that affects the communities we're part of, or even the world we live in, can create and invoke this feeling of fear, anger, sadness, sometimes the whole array of emotions. And inside of you, you might hear this voice that's telling you, if I don't do something, if I don't help, I'll regret it. In the world we live in, there are all sorts of leaders, from leaders of government institutions to corporate masterminds that sit at the head of the table. All across our world, in firms, businesses, academic settings, we learn about leadership through books, video lessons, classes, and so much more that just tries to define what good leadership looks like. But good leadership is more than just having a title. It transcends titles and positions. Because whether or not you have a title, it's an opportunity to listen to the people around you and advocate for the changes that you hope to see. 3 years ago, that's how long that was. But the truth is, there's a lot to this story of what good leadership is, because it's all around us. Last spring, I worked with 6 others on a project for developing leadership skills in high school students, known as the Courageous Leadership Institute. We worked with a wide range of people. We worked with high school students to focus on their positionality and how they can make an impact on social issues that they cared about. But throughout this project, there was a mantra, a leadership mantra that stayed in my head that I really wanted to share, and it was one coined by a life mentor of mine who said it more succinctly than anyone else I've ever met. And it was, how can I help? And for me, it had meant partnering with understaffed food pantries back at home with an organization I'm a part of. It's meant voicing concerns and opinions and beliefs toward people and in positions of leadership so we can actually see the changes we want to see in our communities. It's meant being courageous enough to step into those arenas and fighting for those changes. So when I thought about creating this opportunity for high school students, we worked as a team. We actively worked to ask one another, what can we do to make this better, to make this more fun, to make this a positive experience for students where they can actually learn what it means to be a leader within their communities? And I want you to keep that in mind. Because you don't need a title to ask how to make something work a bit better, and you don't need a title to create the changes that you want to see in your communities. However, if you do have a title, I want you to keep in mind that you have an even greater responsibility to advocate for the changes that you want to see, to listen to the voices of the people around you so you allow for progress to happen. And it's those things that bring people together, and that's important and that's necessary. And I keep thinking back because almost 3 years ago, I was fueled by this question of why. Why does this keep happening? But it goes farther even back than that. Because in 3rd grade, right after Sandy Hook Elementary, my 3rd grade teacher had to explain to us what had happened. But it was in a way for 8-year-olds to understand. I was scared, my friends were scared, but there was a question that loomed around us that wanted to know why. Why does this happen? Why does somebody go into a school and decide to kill and hurt others and tear families apart? And what can we do about it? So those 3 years ago, I went back to my school district. I conducted a project that was rooted in this question of why, and what can we do, and how can we as a collective help. I partnered with elementary, middle, and high school students. I partnered with those school districts to create this sense of belonging, this sense of place. Because when I was researching, I looked into destructive behaviors and the social structures that have allowed school shootings to continue to happen. But I wanted to understand more. So when I undertook this project, we focused on this broad idea of community, of belonging, where students got to work with one another, write letters to one another about what they appreciated about their classmates, but there was an overarching theme. There was a shared sentiment that it only took one person to make somebody's day better, to turn a bad day into a good day, to be kind to one another, and that it ultimately didn't cost anything. And in the era that we live in, of widespread disagreement and tension, we bear witness more than ever before the domestic conflicts and foreign issues of our time. That's broadcasted to a greater extent than ever before, thanks to the influx, the rapid influx of news, media, and opinions. And we see more of it. We witness more of it. Because whether you agree or disagree with the messages of civil resistance, from gun regulations to health insurance access, to climate change, to human right violations, all of these issues require the will of advocates and people who are willing to step into the arena to create the changes that we want to see and to help. Because a long time ago, when all of this happened, when Sandy Hook happened, when my teacher had to explain to us what had happened, it fueled this fire to want to learn. But it's also important because we just can't stand around and do nothing. So I invite you to consider. The next time you read something on the news, talk to one of your friends about something that's happening that's affecting communities you're a part of, or you see something on social media, I hope that you remember to ask. And I hope that you remember just as much that it only takes one person to ask, how can I help?